Hi everyone, welcome to Lava Lab's second Fireside Chat of the semester. My name is Madison, I'm the Director of Industry Relations, and we're so excited to have you all here. Tonight, I'm very excited to welcome the Ridgeline team to our Lava Lab Fireside Chat. So we have Susan Koo, who is the VP of Product at Ridgeline. We have Danny Johnson, VP of Engineering. We have our USC alum, Joan Hong, with us. And we also have Bria Ellie, who has been helping us set up this fireside chat. So thank you all so much for taking the time to be with us tonight. Awesome. So we're going to start off with a 45 minute conversation. Both Joan and I will be moderating, so we're going to change things up a little bit, and then we'll open it up for questions at the end for our cohort to ask. So let's get started. So for Susan, Danny, and Joan, you guys can all do a little intro if you'd like, just to help our audience to get to know you a bit better. Would you mind sharing how you got to where you are today at Ridgeline? And Danny, why don't you kick it off?
Well, I was gonna let one of the ladies start first, but okay, since I'm off mute, I'll go ahead and go first. But I would normally defer to Joan or Susan. Hi everyone, my name is Danny Johnson. I lead product and engineering here at Ridgeline. I've been at Ridgeline really since it started with Dave. I have a career in enterprise software. I graduated from UCSB with a computer science degree many moons ago. Been in enterprise software pretty much for my entire career. Spent time at PeopleSoft, Oracle, spent 11 years at Workday, and have been at Ridgeline really working with Dave Duffield, the founder of PeopleSoft and Workday. I worked for him for almost 25 years and really helped him get Ridgeline, which is his latest software company, off the ground here over the last 3 or 4 years. I've always enjoyed really hard problems and worked my career through really as a computer scientist for the most part, and excited to tell a little bit more of that story today. So I want to be conscious of time. I have a lot more to tell, but I want to pass it over to Susan and maybe let her go next.
So I'm a more recent addition to Ridgeline. I joined in November. I don't come from a traditional computer science background. I graduated with a degree in chemistry, but decided to shift gears a little bit and got into software development and sort of never looked back from there. So I started my career with a series of different startups in different industry verticals, including financial services, healthcare, and insurance, but then spent the bulk of my career building out portfolio accounting and reporting systems for a company called Advent Software. So I spent 13 years there. After I left Advent, I also led product engineering at Esurance, which is an Allstate company, and then found my way to Ridgeline.
So I guess I'm next. I'm Joan. Like Madison said, I'm a USC alum. I graduated from USC in 2018, and I studied computer science and had a minor in cinematic arts. First got kind of involved with like the startup space through the KP Fellows program. And then ever since graduating, I've been at Ridgeline as a product engineer. I'm currently on the data engineering team.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, that was great introductions. We always love hearing more about our speakers. And I was telling Joan earlier that this is actually the first time in a while, maybe the first time ever, that we've had multiple speakers. So we're very, very excited. And this next question is, I'm just throwing it out to all of you. So if whoever wants to answer, feel free. But in your own words, would you mind sharing with us what Ridgeline does?
Danny's looking for one of us to come
Susan, why don't you go?
So Ridgeline is building a cloud-native front-to-back integrated solution for the financial services space. So if you think about investment managers who are out there trying to place bets on what trades they want to make, and then need to know how their portfolio is doing and market their skills and value that they're adding to their clients, and really engage in that client management relationship. That is the whole ecosystem that we are trying to cover. And in order to support that, we're building a platform in addition to very industry specific products to serve trade order management, portfolio accounting, performance and reporting, all the data that you need, whether it's market data or third-party vendor data, and that whole client relationship management experience.
That's awesome. I know Bria was telling me earlier, she made a really good comparison. She was like, think of Ridgeline as like, you know, to investment managers as like Workday is to HR. But just to break it down, you can feel free to jump in and say, Madison, no, that's not a good comparison. Maybe there's a better one. But I know there's many of the students here, like we're very involved in tech. Many people are founders, creating their own startups. But I do have to say that we're not that educated in the investment management space, probably a little bit less familiar in fintech as well. So what are Ridgeline's ultimate goals with what you're doing? Like if you end up doing everything that you want to do, what are you hoping to ultimately achieve at Ridgeline?
Joan, do you want to take that one, or do you want me to answer that one?
I feel like you got this one, Danny.
All right. So for this point for Ridgeline, what we're really hoping to build is, I hope, as Madison mentioned, Workday. Workday is an enterprise software company. They build HR and financial software. They're the second largest cloud provider in the world, next to Salesforce.com. What Ridgeline is really attempting to do is really enter a vertical marketplace in the world of fintech and build a front-to-back platform, as Susan mentioned. A couple more details about the platform. We're building cloud native, all AWS, all serverless. That may be commonplace for folks on this call here tonight, but serverless computing and that type of infrastructure doesn't exist in many enterprise or many companies at all. And for us to be able to kind of take a clean sheet of paper and build a fintech company from the ground up, thinking about technology in a much different way, a much more modern way, ways that allow things like AI and ML to really be leveraged at a much greater clip than what could happen today. A lot of investment managers today, just to let you know how old the technology is, it's not foreign for them to be having a Windows NT server sitting in their kitchen powering their business. It might sound strange, it might sound crazy, but people are running billions of dollars in that kind of configuration and setup. And so that just tells you how much there is a need to be able to modernize the infrastructure and modernize the technology for investment managers today.
That's awesome. That's super fascinating. Thank you for sharing that with us, Danny. We were just talking with our cohort the other night saying you don't necessarily need to always, approach or create a brand new solution to a problem. You just have to make a better one. So I think that definitely applies here. But for a little bit more of the fireside chat, I'm going to pass it on to Joan, because Joan, you've been with Ridgeline for a while now, almost from the very beginning as well. So I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, sounds great. So I think that's something that might be interesting for all of you to hear about is the very beginning of how Ridgeline started. I joined in the pretty early days of Ridgeline with Danny when Ridgeline wasn't even called Ridgeline yet, and we weren't even in the investment management space. And this might be something that, you all as founders might be experiencing as well, kind of pivots and finding the right product and market fit. So Danny, this question is for you. Can you share a little bit about how Ridgeline found the opportunity?
Hey, Joan, you dropped off there for a second. Can you repeat the last part just to make sure everyone else heard that?
Yeah, sure. Can you share a little bit about how Ridgeline found opportunity in the investment management industry?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So as Joan mentioned, we were initially founded in October of 2017, and we had to come up with a name, and we were calling ourselves Ponderosa Solutions for a period of time. For those that know, there's a pine tree, and it's called a ponderosa, and we were founded in Incline Village, Nevada. And so if you've been up to Lake Tahoe, you know there's plenty of ponderosas everywhere. And so we initially were going to become a Workday partner. Dave Duffield is the chairman and founder of Workday. And so we were going to build a solution or a new set of solutions on a new Workday platform, and we did that for a little while. Unfortunately, that platform wasn't going to move as fast as we wanted to move. as a young agile startup, we wanted to get to market quickly and build applications quickly. And so that ultimately didn't pan out. We had some ideas, and we ultimately thought for a second we were going to become a healthcare company. Everyone can kind of get emotionally connected to healthcare, and it impacts all of us on a daily basis. If it's ourselves as individuals or our family or relatives, healthcare is something we all care about. And many of you have been, I'm sure all of you have been to the doctor at some point in time. You can all imagine that some of those systems could definitely use some upgrading. And we thought we were going to do that. And we ultimately pitched an idea that we had to some very prominent investment bankers. And we weren't going to them for money, but we were really going to them to pitch the idea of becoming a healthcare company and what that might look like. And they listened to our presentation for about 45 minutes, and they kind of leaned back in the chair and they kind of said, well, that might work. That might work. You guys can probably do okay, and there's not really anybody else taking that approach. That might be okay. But we think we have a better idea for you. And then they went on for 2 hours presenting to us an idea about investment management. And at the time, personally, I was very hesitant about that. I had spent really better part of 20 years of my career building financial applications, first at PeopleSoft, then at Oracle, and then at Workday. And I was like, I don't know, I've had enough of this financial thing. Maybe I want to kind of do something else. Healthcare just kind of feels like that emotional connection. Maybe I'll do that. And we sat back and we thought about it a little bit more, and we started doing some market research and really started to see the opportunity that was presenting itself in investment management. And it really goes to one of the questions I answered earlier in regards to Windows NT servers sitting in kitchens with no failover plan, no backup, no ability to use an internet browser in some cases to be able to access the applications. And it started to feel a lot like the same reasons PeopleSoft, which was created in the 90s, and ultimately Workday, which was created in the early 2000s. So a lot of the same parallels started lining up. And it started to become a no-brainer that we should enter the space of investment management. The existing solutions have all been kind of not as heavily invested in the last 10 or 15 years. And it really started to create a massive technology opportunity in a space that was very underserved. And so in September of 2018, we decided to become an investment management software company and haven't looked back since.
Yeah, and I think it really goes to show that, in the very early days of a startup, there might be times when it's really right to pivot what industry you're going into, and kind of being a part of that experience as someone who is an early career, a new grad, I think was definitely interesting. So that might be something that you kind of come across if you're working at or building a startup as well. So I guess now that we've heard that story, is there anything that you would have done differently in the early days?
I mean, I've learned so much in my time. I've been very blessed to be able to work with Dave and to be able to kind of find a mentor and find someone that I related to not just as an engineer but as a person. I think people's core values are extremely important to somewhere that you work, somewhere that you can kind of find alignment to who you are and value similar things to the way you value them. It doesn't mean everything has to be in perfect alignment, but the way you treat people, as an example. One of Ridgeline's core values is employees. It's not just any core value, it's our first core value. For those that know a little bit about Dave, if you've done any research, he's one of the 100 richest people on the planet. He could do anything he wants. He doesn't have to start another startup company. He's really about creating opportunities. And for us here at Ridgeline, I think he's created an amazing opportunity for us to be able to go off and build a company. I think to answer the question directly of doing anything different, I was very comfortable at my space at Workday and continue to stay at a great company. But Dave asked me of 1 million people on the planet to start a company with, and I couldn't say no to that. At my time at Ridgeline, I've had to learn a whole lot of things, from building buildings, as you know, Joan, to, remodeling places, to understanding hinges and which way things go, just to kind of understanding different ways to communicate and different ways to connect with people. It still comes down to relationships, and relationships are incredibly important to how we need to build the company. And I'm incredibly proud with where Ridgeline is today, but we still got a long way to go. And so to really say anything different, I don't know if I can pick any one thing that I wish I would have done differently, but I know along the way there's definitely things that I've learned that, in reflection, that I'd probably want to improve on going forward.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely didn't expect to be throwing an axe into a wall when we were taking down the old building before building the new office. So definitely interesting experiences come from
True
a
fact.
startup.
In fact, there's a video of Joan throwing axes at a wall. So,
Yeah. I guess this question is for Susan. From your perspective, joining in November, is there anything that surprised you about how Ridgeline was started and grown? There's just so many startups out there today. What made you want to come to Ridgeline now at its current state?
Well, my path to Ridgeline is actually longer than November. Danny and I actually met over a year prior to then, I think, because when Ridgeline decided that they wanted to focus on investment management, the president, Chris McLean, reached out to me on LinkedIn and was like, "Hey, we're building this startup. It would be great to talk to you. I heard your name through just people in our network, because you've worked in the space." And at the time I was like, wow, that sounds really interesting. But I was getting entrenched in my role at Esurance, and I was like, this is really not the right time. But I couldn't not take that call. And so it started the conversation, over a year in advance. And it was what Ridgeline was doing was just so interesting and compelling to me that I couldn't shake it from the back of my mind. And when the opportunity arose and the timing was right, being able to come on board was great. I think in terms of just any surprises, it's different from some of the experiences I've had in the past. A lot, especially more recently in the last decade, I've been working at more established enterprise software companies. That comes with different baggage, if you will, legacy products, legacy expectations, huge revenue goals that, you have to meet in different ways than you do in a startup. So the pace is definitely different. The technology is obviously different than what I was using. I mean, when Danny's like, hey, it's a Windows NT server, that's completely true. And those were the applications that I was working on before. So learning to leverage new technology for very similar problems is very interesting. And then also scaling a team at this rate in our phase of startup growth is just different for me. I think it's not necessarily surprising. I knew what I was getting in for, but it's just a new experience.
Yeah, definitely. And I think like both you and Danny touched on, like growing the team and really just focusing on the people is a huge part of Ridgeline. So this is kind of a question for both of you. What has been the most challenging part of growing the team and the company? I know it's been at a really fast rate compared to some other startups. So yeah, if you could talk a little bit about that, that'd be great.
COVID. I would say that's the biggest challenge, at least for me personally. Like, it's very hard joining a team remotely. I'm just very used to having that connection, especially for early. I might not have worked at startups in the last recent years, but often was working on new initiatives within the company, so new growth projects. And with that, just being able to get into a room with people and get to know people really quickly, there's just that in-person connection is I miss it. I think we do a fantastic job connecting at Ridgeline, way better than I've seen many, many companies do. And when I share my experience with my friends and my colleagues from past lives, it's definitely unique. But I think for me, that's the biggest challenge. Easy, hands down.
I think what I would say is just expectations. I come from a company with Dave where, if anybody knows Workday, it's a $60 billion company. It's a great company. One in whatever 10,000 startups will be as good as a company like Workday. And so, we like to say that we live in the shadows of giants. PeopleSoft was a $10 billion company. Workday was a $60 billion company. I have very clear understanding of what Dave's expectations are, working with him for so long. And continuing to try to live up to that every single day is definitely a challenge, but something that motivates me as well. Connecting with people and getting people to understand, what it is that we're trying to do. As Susan mentioned, hiring people during COVID. We actually closed the office March 13th of last year. So we're approaching 1 year out of the office. During that 1 year, we've more than doubled the company. And what I would say is that we've also, from a lot of perspectives, maintained an amazing culture at the same time. One of the things that I would probably be most proud of in that context is just how people are willing to help. Like once you're part of the Ridgeline team, regardless if you've ever met the person, many people haven't met them. If you just drop a coffee chat on someone's calendar, they're happy to stop what they're doing and meet with you for half an hour. You can drop in any Slack channel and say, hey, I need some help with this. And a stranger will just start responding to you and helping. Even though that stranger knows that might mean an extra 30 minutes that night or an extra 2 hours working because I'm going to help somebody. But the willingness to do it is something that I continue just to be astonished by. And that type of atmosphere and that type of workplace just kind of carries people through even the toughest times of things like COVID. And so just really proud of that and trying to maintain that at times. And so there's a lot of expectations there, but happy to be doing it with such a great team.
Yeah, I mean, I've witnessed that firsthand. Everyone is just so helpful. And if you have some kind of like coding question or design question, people are always like, oh, let's just hop on a Zoom. Let's talk it out together. Let's brainstorm. And I think just keeping up that collaboration in the remote world is really important. Yeah, from my perspective of kind of seeing how the team has grown, I think one thing that has been a challenge in being an engineer is just how the team structures have kind of changed. In the very beginning, like one marketing person, I would just turn around and he's just there and I can just check out what he's working on or what people are working on across the entire company, basically in one little cubicle. But now, we have a lot more formalized teams, squads, and all of that. So I think just getting used to that growth and how we collaborate together has been definitely a challenge, but something that I think we are tackling really well and focusing on a lot. So the next question is kind of around teams again. I guess, when do you know when it's a good time to pursue a challenge and execute it versus when it's a good time to pivot?
Since Susan, you go off mute, I'll take this one. So Joan, when you ask that question, is it pursue a challenge like going forward from a career perspective or going forward, do you think from a regular challenge? Can you add a little bit more?
Yeah, sure. I guess maybe not from a career perspective, maybe just more like feature building, creating the product from that perspective.
Yeah. So, recently as a company, we were working with our first customer, and we had been working with our first customer for the last almost 2 years, pretty closely. And one of the things that we wanted to do was bring that customer live and have them be the first customer using our product fully in production, meaning managing all their trades and all of their accounting and all of their reporting, on the Ridgeline platform. Being able to build a product, incubate it, and then be able to get your first customers really using it in a production-like environment, there's nothing equivalent to that. What you will learn from customers using your product and giving you real feedback is invaluable in continuing to grow your company. As we worked through that with our customer, it became clear that there's different types of customers out there when you get your first customer. There's early adopters, there's people that are on the cutting edge of technology, there's people that are like, kind of followers and they'll kind of follow, and then there's laggards. There's a book called Crossing the Chasm. If you haven't had a chance to read that, you should pick that up, and talks a lot about if you're interested in kind of starting a company, the types of things you'll need to think about and the types of customers at different parts of their journey. And our first customer just wasn't really demonstrating the ability to be truly an innovator. And it was a pretty difficult decision as a company, but we ultimately decided to pivot away from that first customer towards a different customer because it was going to become too difficult for us to be able to get them fully live. It doesn't mean we abandoned them. It doesn't mean we just left them in the lurch. What we decided to do was slow them down a little bit, work with them, be partners with them. Again, our second core value at Ridgeline is customers. So we want to make sure that we always kind of keep what's in the best interest of the customer at top of mind, and really work closely with them. And we just recognized that we were probably pushing them too fast and they weren't going to be able to go they're a 35-person company. You know, we have 220 people chomping at the bit like every single day, like, okay, let's go. You know, and they don't operate that way. And we were pushing them too fast, and they weren't ready, and so we needed to pivot as a company. It wasn't an easy call because there was a lot of emotion and a lot of inertia wrapped up in that decision to be able to bring that first customer live. And on some level, some people at the company thought, well, did we miss it? Did we do something wrong? Why did we fail? You know, and it wasn't fail. We learned a lot from that customer. That customer's still going to be one of our first, I'd say, 5 customers that go live on our product. But it was a decision that we had to make to keep moving the company forward. And so those pivots are never easy, but they're things that you have to be comfortable making tough decisions. And then I think the important thing is be transparent about why you made the decision and share that with people around you.
Just to piggyback on that, I think, you know, what we try to practice is not to be paralyzed in taking the first step. As engineers, we actually love solving challenging problems. So just diving in and just trying to see what that problem might be, how we might solve it. Sometimes it's that first step that's the hardest, but as you continue on that path, reevaluate, recommit, and make sure that it's the right path that you're on. Don't fall prey to the sunk cost fallacy, and just make sure that it's still the right decision for today that it was yesterday based on what you've learned and where things might have changed.
Yeah, that's such good advice. I feel like if you're working on a piece of code or something, sometimes you feel that sunk cost fallacy of trying one solution, and eventually you just find out it doesn't work. And then you just have to pivot, and it's great to hear that this happens in the real world, and you just kind of have to be okay with it and roll with the punches. So the next question is kind of along the similar lines. How important is finding the right first set of customers for an enterprise startup?
I would say it's very important for a couple reasons. As you're building something new, as Danny said, finding the customers who have the right mindset to be your partner and to really think strategically about how they are benefiting from what you're building, but also how they want to benefit you and be part of that journey. Having that skin in the game is really, really important. The other piece of it is, as you're building a new product and a new company, you need to be really laser focused on what your target market is. And if you don't pick your partners strategically, you can get off track. You know, you want to be really, really good at your target niche and then expand, rather than be, you know, halfway for a lot of people, because you're not really satisfying anyone.
Danny, what do you think?
No, I mean, I think Susan answered it the same way I would. I think that your first customers are ultimately going to be your first set of references. You know, and if the school I come from is, you know, the best references or your best reference materials isn't your marketing team, it's your customers. It's how your customers talk about you. It's how your customers become the ones that lead you to other customers. It's who your customers call to ask, like, hey, how's that product offering going? Is that working well? Tell me about your business. Tell me how it's going. What have you learned? Would you buy it again? You know, you want customers to be your biggest advocates at the end of the day. And so, you know, ultimately our success is not by how many lines of code we've written or how good we are or how many awards we might win. It's really about our customers and how much success have our customers, you know, seen by using our software. Have we made it easier for them? That's ultimately what's going to create our success. Everything else comes along as part of that.
Yeah, that's so true. I'm thinking about it in terms of restaurants. Like, if you have a lot of great reviews on Yelp, then more people will come and eat at your restaurant. So it's natural that it's the same for an enterprise startup. A little bit different, but similar.
No, that's a great analogy. It's a great analogy. It really is.
Yeah. So, I guess now that you kind of have the right customers in mind, I feel like for a lot of startups, if you try to satisfy every single different type of customer, you just try to get, you know, funding from VCs, you might get a little bit off track. how do you determine and maintain that laser focus on the roadmap and vision for the product?
I think that it's incredibly difficult to balance in many cases the features and functions of whatever product you build with the technology requirements and the technology and the vision of where you want to bring it. And I think that's a constant struggle that every technology company has to face. In some cases, customers buy features and functions. They want to see the features and functions of whatever solution in whatever vertical or whatever industry that you're entering. However, from a computer science perspective and a technology perspective, we always want to build it in a way that's going to make it more scalable or faster or better, or it's going to add this feature or it's going to open that door for us. And how do you balance between those two things? There's a constant tension. And if there's not a constant tension, that probably means you have it wrong. If you're not constantly pulling and pushing each other, then probably one side is losing too much, and that's going to end up costing you in the long run. And so the way I would think about it is, you want to be able to be set up in an organization that is driving forward new technical change, but also has a very important business problem they're trying to solve, and you try to invest in those somewhat equally. Again, it's not every day am I getting half my engineers here and half my engineers there. You can't look at it like that. It's not just as simple the way us engineers think from a mindset problem. There's got to be a mathematical answer. It's got to be exactly 2. No, it doesn't work that way. It's kind of, you got to find that right mix to be able to get to market fast enough to be able to live to fight another day. That's incredibly important.
I think another dimension to that is like, what's your strategy for beyond, and making sure that you have your eye on what's beyond that. The first 6 clients that we have, we're not thinking just about their needs, but we're trying to think about how we're building a sustainable business and balancing that in addition. So it's that they're partnering with us to anticipate where they're going to need to be 5, 10, 20 years from now. So there's like the block and tackle of what we have to do today to make them successful and get them live on our system in the next year or 2. But we want this to be the platform that they grow with for the next 20, 30 years.
Yeah, those are both great points. I think, Danny, what you said with the tension between product and technology, I definitely see that within the teams as well. Like the product manager and with the technical lead kind of having different priorities, but still really working together to make the product ultimately better in different ways. So I think it's really cool that it kind of translates from the higher level vision for the entire product and for the company down to the teams as well. And then, yeah, Susan, having that long-term vision and not just focusing too much on the first few customers, although they are very important, but making sure that everything is strategized for the long term, I think is a really awesome point as well. So with that, I'm kind of closing out the, the part that I'll be moderating, and now I'll be passing it off back to Madison to jump back into the Lab perspective of, of this.
Can I ask a question, Madison?
Of course.
Joan, I'd like to ask you a question.
Okay.
How did you decide to choose to join Ridgeline?
That's a great question, Danny. So it was a really interesting experience. Very unconventional, which might be the case with joining a lot of different startups. So don't be too surprised if it is a little unconventional if you're trying to join a startup. For me, I guess I first interviewed for Workday students, and then kind of just got to know the team there, had a really great experience, but decided that I really wanted to join a startup. At the time, I hadn't met Danny, who was heading up that organization. But after the fact, I guess word got back to Danny about why I didn't want to join, why I wanted to join a startup at the time. And somehow it turned out that he and Dave and Mike and some other people were starting a startup at the exact time. So somehow the timing worked out. Danny and I met in a California pizza kitchen. I was a little worried that I might get kidnapped and that but it worked out fine. It was a legitimate opportunity. And and I guess after that, I got to meet Mike, who is the chief architect, and kind of talk to him about the technology vision, architecture vision, all of that. And just, being able to be a part of these kinds of conversations that is not common for a new grad to be a part of was just something that was really exciting. And I like being thrown into the deep end and just learning by doing instead of having a little bit more structure. That's kind of where I thrive. So I decided I'll take this leap of faith. I don't know if it's necessarily even going to be an Incline Village or what, but I thought I would take the risk, and I think it's really paid off.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that, Joan. Danny, it's like you read my mind. That leads me right into our next little bit of questions to wrap it up before we go into questions from Lava Lab. But we have a lot of students here, like I said, who are either interested in becoming founders and are working on their startups right now, or many of our Lava Lab alums actually go off and work in startups for their first job in industry, which kind of is a changing trend. I know mostly they would go to bigger companies at first, but I would say a good portion of our alumni are now looking to go into the startup world. So I was just wondering, do any of you have any advice on building and or working in a startup for young graduates?
Bria, do you want to take this one?
Go ahead, Bria.
I feel like I had like the smallest feeling that you throw me out there. Honestly, I think the biggest thing is I feel like a lot of students that are considering startups, kind of like, I don't know, get a little bit pigeonholed in the role that they're looking for. I think that something that's cool about a startup is that you can really like kind of just see where your niche is. Startups allow a lot of flexibility. And so definitely ask those questions, like put yourself out there to your manager, to keep in mind that, you know, even though there might not be a team there right now, there have been so many teams at Ridgeline that have started in the past couple of months that you can like kind of just kick started on. So I would say if you're looking to, you know, join a startup, definitely just continue to put those feelers out there about like what's coming in the business and how you can get involved. And really just kind of being that helping hand for others. So, I mean, new grads, you know, going in, I think that one of the biggest things is that you see a ton of growth within like the first 6 months. And there's going to be a ton of other people also joining in those 6 months, that you've already been there. And so, you know, again, like reaching out that helping hand, putting the coffee chat on their calendar, like Danny had mentioned, and just getting to know them and making them comfortable, or anyone that starts comfortable is like a really big, I would say benefit to kind of how a startup just really creates its community and its culture. So it definitely isn't just like leadership kind of trickling down the orders for us to do that. It's always us just wanting to be like, I wonder who this person on our PM team just started, or like what their background is. And so making those personal connections really goes a long way.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing, Bria. Anyone else want to add on before I move into the next question?
Just to add on a little bit about like as a new grad perspective, I think if you are interested in working at a startup that's already been established, definitely do your research into everything kind of surrounding it. Like that might not be conventional for a more established company. Like, you know, what are options? How do they work? All of that. And kind of, I guess, understanding are as well, because I think the team and the people that you work with are really, really important for a startup, because, you know, you'll be working really hard and potentially long hours with them. So I think you really have to, or it's better if you really enjoy the people that you're working with and are really inspired and motivated by them. So try to meet as many people in the startup as you can, understand what their values are, so that you know that you're joining a team that you really want to work hard together with. And then I think if you're on the other side of like wanting to found your own startup, from other people that I've seen, I think being parts of applying for fellowships, kind of in the startup space, is a really great way to find your community, and obviously organizations like this. But I think fellowships offer a lot of like financial opportunities, as well as an opportunity to find co-founders as well. So that might be something to look into too.
Yeah, that's an awesome point, Joan. I don't think many people think about the fellowship route. We actually just recently had one of our alums in his startup actually go that route, and it's a really, really cool area to go into. So it's a really great piece of advice. So thank you. And our last question to wrap it up before we open up the floor, which I think can be applied to all four of you, if you would all like to answer. What's the most unexpected thing that you've learned from working in a startup? Joan and I collaborated to really choose the hardest questions for tonight, so I'm glad to see that this is a real thinker.
I think that it's kind of a given, but I didn't think that this was going to come out in the way that I had thought. But I would say it's the relationship with the leaders that I've met at Ridgeline. It's one of those things where the president of our company, like back before COVID, like I would see him at yoga, and it's really cool to just have that like personal connection, and see them in places that weren't just in a working world environment. So I think it felt like it should have been expected, but when I started at Ridgeline and really started to get to know the leaders like Danny and Susan, it was unexpected to just like how much exposure you really get, to people, in a VP or up level. And it's really cool to just kind of listen to their perspective and have their guidance and all that good stuff. So thanks, Danny and Susan.
You're welcome, Bria.
That's great.
Thank you. I think what I would say, I don't want to take the easy way out, but I think it is very relevant for where we're at. When I initially met Dave and we talked about building a company, and we talked about building it in Tahoe, that was a different location and, a different place. And it's not the same thing like, hey, I'm going to go to the Silicon Valley, or I'm going to go to Seattle, or I'm going to go to New York City, being able to build a company from the ground up. And can you recruit the talent, and can you get the right folks, and can you do those things? All those things have been, challenging. But at the same time, I kind of knew that we would be able to build a great company there. I think the hardest thing is just with what's happened in the environment around us. If it's COVID or civil unrest, the last 12 months have been just an incredible time period to try to build a startup, especially one that really relies on people as deeply as we do at Ridgeline. And to be able to continue to find that right talent, the right approach, the teamwork, the willingness to make sacrifices and not just make it about yourself has been incredibly challenging for us, but at the same time very rewarding. And I think it's ultimately going to make us a stronger company, but it definitely has been difficult to try to work through that at times. Some of the communication, some of the little things, some of the little nuances that just become so much easier when you can have that like emotional and physical connection with somebody is just way different than trying to always do it over Zoom.
In some ways, though, that's like my big surprise. Like, even after having worked at a company for 13 years, just the deep connections that I feel like I've been able to make with people on the team are just tremendous. And Joan's advice is so spot on. Like, these are people you're going to be working with all day long, sometimes every day of the week. And they need to be ones that have your back, that you feel like you have that trust with them, and that you will do for them all the things that you ask them to do for you. In less than 4 months, there's so many people at Ridgeline that I could name that would drop anything to help me with anything, whether it's work or it's just like a personal favor or whatever. And it's that sort of connection that I knew I wanted to sign up for with the Dave Duffield company, but wasn't sure how it would pan out. And it's just far exceeded my expectations.
Yeah, for me, I think, I don't know, I was expecting things to be unconventional, so I'm not sure that I was too surprised by much. Maybe that's just my personality, but I guess one thing that I was happily surprised by is how close I was able to get with people outside of work too, and just how willing people were able to help like outside of work. Like for example, like my boyfriend's car broke down in the middle of town, and I just messaged one of the Slack channels like, does anyone have a jumper cable? And someone did, and I just drove over to their house and grabbed it for him. And yeah, so I think just being able to have that kind of relationship with like your teammates is pretty cool. And just something so different than what I expected from like the working corporate world, you know, as a student.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, all four of you, for answering the question. It has been so fun getting to hear more about Ridgeline from you all. We don't have a whole lot of startups come through Lava Lab all the time, so it's always super fun when we do have one. So I'm going to open up the floor for our cohort and Lava Lab alumni to ask questions now. So if you have a question, feel free to unmute yourself, or you can raise your hand and I can call on you, just like we did last time. And feel free to ask anything. They're all here to listen and answer for your questions. So ask away.
I'm just gonna start off really quickly. 2 questions. One, first of all, thank you all for coming. It was very insightful to hear all of your different perspectives. But this week we actually put all the cohort members into their teams, and at Lava Lab, our slogan is "Find your co-founders," and you all consistently kept on mentioning how important people were at Ridgeline. So what do you think stands out about the people at Ridgeline, whether it's the founders or just the other people you work with? What really stands out? And then, Joan, were you a CP for a CS course in like 2017?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, like 103 or like 104?
Yeah, 103 or 102, one of those.
Oh my gosh, you were probably seeing me struggle. This is like 4 years ago, probably failing intro to CS. But I kind of remember you from that. But
oh, that's so cool.
Yes, just asking about what stands out about the people that you work with.
I would say shared values is number one, because you can't fake that, and it's hard. And when I say shared values, it's not necessarily shared styles, but at the core of what's important to you, you need to make sure that's consistent. And I would say that that's something that when I chose to leave a job, it was because I lost that connection and feeling like the values were there. So with your co-founders, I think just making sure that your priorities are similar, even if you might approach things differently. I actually love the diversity of opinion and try to surround myself with others, because that's the way that I'll be challenged. But you still have to be able to come to that core set of values that are shared.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it's really awesome that we have a focus on diversity and inclusion. I'm part of like a ERG, or an employee resource group, that focuses on diversity and inclusion. And I think we have, you know, diversity in a variety of different ways. So being able to interact with people who have years of experience in technology or in finance, or people who are like just graduating from college, just from a variety of different backgrounds, has been really awesome. And yeah, I agree with Susan, like having those shared values is really important as well.
That's awesome. We talk a lot about values at Lava Lab, so I know that's definitely really, really important to have always. Mena, see your hands raised.
Yeah, hi. First of all, just like thank you so much for talking to us. Just hearing about your respective passions for Ridgeline is very motivating, I guess, and it's really nice to hear. I have a question that's more so directed towards Susan, but I kind of wanted to know or hear more about your transition from chemistry to sort of tech and like software engineering, and like how you sort of went about that.
Well, it starts with just, I think I was a little too heads down in college with just like coming in as an 18-year-old and thinking that for sure I was going to be a PhD candidate in chemistry and just go that route. And, you know, I remember the summer after junior year just thinking to myself, do I really want to sign up for 7 more years of this? And not feeling like I had that passion for it anymore. So thankfully, I took senior year to take a bunch of electives, and Intro to Computer Science is one of them. And so I learned to code, and I just found myself really involved in those problems, like just frustrated, but elated, when I felt like I had solved it. And it was just good timing, I graduated in the year of 2000. So it was still while the dot-com boom was going on, and just kind of went for it. I just felt like it was something that I was passionate about, wanted to get more involvement in, and just kind of went from there, just continued to grow my skills and in different projects.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Great question, Mena. Hannah, see your hands raised.
Yeah. Hi, thanks again for coming here today and talk to us. During the discussion, Susan briefly mentioned to have like laser sharp focus on for the market that we are targeting. And I was thinking right now our cohort is just formed a group and we are started thinking about what project to work on. And I'm thinking, I have a solution, but should I find the laser sharp market for that solution, or should I find the market first and then find the solution toward targeting that the market? Did I make sense?
I mean, I feel like this is a little bit of a cop out, but it's very situational sometimes. Like, I think sometimes you can't discover if there's a market without something to show. I think that failing fast is something we talk about a lot and we try to practice. And whether it's testing a market and then just moving on and testing a different market, that's something that you can test very quickly. But we also do a lot of, let's spike this work out and just get something to show and just learn from that experience and then have that to show and test the market. So it's, I don't know, it really varies. I think that for something like Danny described of trying to figure out the overall macro market that we wanted to serve, we benefited from the guidance of some advisors who said like, hey, look, I think that there's a great market here. But in other areas, like where we're trying to figure out if we are building the right thing or where we should be focusing our priorities, we will often put together prototypes, designs, or even just some code just to say, hey, is this what you're looking for? Is this what you need? Does this fit the use case that you're suffering from right now? Like, does this solve that for you?
Yeah, makes sense. I guess it's like chicken and egg.
Yeah, I would say just like for either approach, it's just try to get that feedback as soon as possible and then pivot if necessary.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, I feel like as engineers, we tend to think about the solution first, or like, oh, this technology would be really cool to use. Like, okay, maybe we can use blockchain here, or, use this latest database or whatnot, but it's not necessarily the right solution for a certain problem. So I think it's not bad to like think about those technologies first and have that technology first mindset, as long as you are also focusing on, what is the actual business problem that this is solving. So yeah, definitely agree.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you, Hannah. Before we wrap it up, is there any more questions that anyone would like to ask?
I have one small story to tell. I think it's pretty relevant.
Please go ahead. We love stories.
One very small story to tell here. So
take your time.
Yeah, no. So I actually had the opportunity to present to Lava Lab back in 2018, and the reason I ever hired Joan was from Anisha, and Anisha is a USC alum too that I saw kind of pop on at the chat here and was at Lava Lab a number of years ago, and so the kind of moral of the story, I would say here is, you never know where relationships are going to take you. And the reason I ever found Joan was through Anisha. Anisha interned for me all the way back in 2017, 2016. I think I met her maybe even in 2015, something like that. And just kind of the stories to get to how we get to where we are so incredibly important. And so the relationships you build in Lava Lab and the relationships you build in other places can become extremely valuable to you in your career. And you never know really when you're going to use them. I even still have, here I'll be a total homer. I even still got the Lava Lab shirt.
Oh, wow.
From Anisha, back in the day, and so these are things that, you build on. And when we talk about employees and people being the center of what you do, this is a great example of, I would never have Joan on the Ridgeline team if it wasn't for my relationship, and how I even met Anisha is definitely a different, unique story for a different day. But just, cherish the people around you and cherish the relationships you build, and clubs like this can really make a difference for you and your future. So.
Well, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing, Danny. Thank you for keeping our T-shirt. We're thoroughly impressed. I can tell.
I didn't know if I should really break it out, but I figured I got to tell the story because I think it's pretty unique. And then when Nisha joined, I'm like, I really got to tell the story.
You got to. You just gained some major kudo points, so that's awesome. Anisha, do you want to do a quick intro of yourself and say hi to everyone?
Oh man, okay. First of all, hi Danny, hi Joan, good to see you guys. Yeah, I'm Anisha. I graduated from USC in 2017, and I've been working at Workday for nearly 4 years now. I just switched into engineering management, and it's been a lot of fun, but I miss Lava Lab a lot. I was in Lava Lab for 3 years. I was part of one of the first Lava Lab cohorts actually, but back then we had no idea what we were doing. It's way cooler now. So it's just really cool to see you guys, keep building on what we tried to build back then. And I mean, Lava Lab keeps building cooler products, recruiting amazing people. So it's been really special to watch you guys continue.
Well, thank you so much for coming. That means a lot. And yeah, we always look back and we're like, we have to keep Lava Lab going. We all love Lava Lab so much. And I know I can speak for all of you who are in the whole cohort in saying that we're so glad that these relationships have brought you together. And that's awesome. I didn't even know that connection existed. And I think that's really great because at its core, that's what Lava Lab is really about. We want to find our co-founders, but more importantly, we want to find people in the tech industry, and even industries that people go out into and make their own careers. And we're just really happy to have Lava Lab as a similar connection. And it's always so great when we get to talk with our alums and see all the awesome things that they're doing. So we appreciate you being here. Awesome. Well, it's right at 8 o'clock. We're on time, which is fabulous. We always strive to be on time, but thank you so much for, everyone coming. Bria, Danny, Susan, Joan, Anisha, thank you for popping in. Thank you all for taking the time to talk with us tonight. It was such a joy to learn more about Ridgeline, and all of your advice was much, much appreciated. And we really thank you for spending your night with us.